Greetings, saludos everyone. On behalf of the National Latino Behavioral Health Association and the National Hispanic and Latino Prevention Technology Transfer Center, we welcome you to our Presenting Teen Dating Violence Among Latino Youth webinar. My name is Dolca Michelle Zelaya. I'm the project coordinator for the National Hispanic and Latino Prevention Technology Transfer Center. I will be your host for today's webinar. Before I introduce you to the presenter, here are some brief instructions about today's presentation. Next slide, please. The webinar will be recorded and archived for future playback. It will be closed captioned in Spanish and eventually also in Portuguese. The lines will be muted throughout the presentation. When we get to the Q&A portions of our webinar, you will have an opportunity to ask questions by typing your questions into the Q&A box, and I will present your question to our speakers. Although we're not providing continuing education credit for this event, we plan to do so for future events. For this webinar, we can provide you with an electronic certificate of attendance with 1.5 hour credit upon request when you complete the evaluation. So let's begin. Let's start by introducing the National Hispanic and Latino Prevention Technology Transfer Center that is housed at the National Latino Behavioral Health Association, NALBA. NALBA is a nonprofit organization located in New Mexico. NALBA was established to fill a need for a unified national voice for Latino populations in the behavioral health arena and to bring attention to the great disparities that exist in areas of access, utilization, practice-based research, and effectively trained personnel. Next slide, please. Our National Hispanic and Latino Prevention Technology Transfer Center is part of the PTTC network, which is an international multidisciplinary resource for professionals in the prevention field. Established in 1993 by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration, SAMHSA. The PTTC network is comprised of 10 domestic regional centers, 6 international HIV centers funded by PEPFAR, 2 national focus areas, and a network coordinating office. Together, the network serves the 50 USA states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and the Pacific Islands of Guam, American Samoa, Palau, the Marshall Islands, Micronesia, and the Mariana Islands. The International HIV ATTC serves Vietnam, South Asia, South Africa, and Ukraine. Here you're seeing the map of the US-based PTTCs. The Hispanic and Latino Prevention Technology Transfer Center has a national focus for Hispanic and Latino communities and the workforce that provides services for these communities. The PTTC is staffed by Dr. Pierluigi Mancini, our project director. Priscilla Yamasi is our executive administrative assistant, and myself as a project coordinator. Next slide, please. We are happy to announce that this webinar is the first webinar of a 2-part webinar series in collaboration with our sister center, the National Hispanic and Latino Addiction Technology Transfer Center. And the second webinar will take place on February 25th at 11:30, and the presentation is titled Intersection of Domestic Violence or Intimate Partner Violence and Addiction. So we invite you to participate in the second webinar. Next slide, please. Also, we will be asking you to fill out a brief evaluation at the end of this webinar. This evaluation survey is important to the work we do and provide us with the opportunity to improve our training efforts and secure fundings to continue our work. Please take a minute to take the survey. Next slide, please. Now it is time to introduce our esteemed presenter, Glory McDaniel. She earned her master's of Art in Clinical and Mental Health Program for Denver Seminary. Ms. McDaniel is a bilingual therapist working with a specific treatment of co-occurring substance use disorder and post-traumatic stress, addiction, mental health illness, leading both in English and Spanish groups, educating the community as well as an individual counselor. She served on the board of the Colorado Association of Addiction Professionals and a facilitator for Mending the Soul group Women for Survivors of Abuse. Ms. McDaniel earned her Bachelor of Science degree in Human Services with emphasis in domestic violence, counseling, and addiction counseling from the Metropolitan State University of Denver in 2013. Glory, welcome to our house. Thank you for accepting our invitation to conduct this webinar. February is the month of domestic violence, and we are very happy to have you here. Please, you can proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, Dorta. Good morning, all, and thank you for participating in this webinar. So before we begin this presentation, I want to give you all permission to leave this webinar if this information becomes triggering or uncomfortable. Seek help, call the National Domestic Hotline number, call your therapist, call a friend, take care of yourself before continuing to listen to this webinar. This information is hard and needs to be presented and provided, as it will inform us of ways to prevent, help, and know if a person is being abused. So this webinar will provide education and awareness of teen dating violence, TDV, and note that TDV and IPV will be used interchangeably. How can I learn warning signs of abuse in teen dating? How does teen dating violence affect Latino youth? How can TDV be prevented? Learning objectives will be understanding teen dating violence, statistics of teen dating violence, statistics of teen dating violence among the Latino teens, warning signs of abuse, relationship between TDV and substance use. Prevention, identifying healthy versus unhealthy relationships. What are good communication skills? Setting boundaries, asking for help, and how to break the cycle of abuse. And before I dive into the webinar, I'm going to share a little bit about my story. And so I believe that the experiences I have faced in life have led me to become the person I am today, and to follow a career as a behavioral health and addiction counselor. My life experiences have been difficult and even hard to bear at times because they deal with abuse. Born and raised in New York City and a Puerto Rican, I have had a difficult life. Some of it can be attributed to my choices, while much of it occurred because of abusive situations, starting from childhood through most of my adult life. I have been abused sexually, physically, emotionally, financially, verbally, and spiritually and mentally. The first type of abuse I experienced was spiritual abuse. I was raised in an extreme, strict religious household. What I mean by strict is that I was not allowed to wear pants, I could not cut my hair, I could not have bangs, I couldn't go to the movie theaters, I couldn't have sleepovers with friends, I couldn't participate in sports, listen to secular music, go to parties, or anything. Everything that was not a church activity was considered a sin. We attended church 5 times a week, and on special occasions, even 7 times a week. I was sexually molested when I was 7 years old and did not have any recollection of it until I was 21 years of age. I cannot remember anything from my childhood from the age of 7 to 12. At the age of 12, I changed from being a kind and gentle person into an angry, bitter person. I felt ignored and constantly compared to others. I was desperately seeking attention and only got attention when I got into trouble, which was often because I learned that that was the only way I was going to be seen. I turned to alcohol and drugs when I was 12 years old to numb the pain, not really knowing where it was coming from. In middle school, my friends were gang members because I felt only they understood me. own school and even suspended from school for fighting. I failed the 7th grade and had to go to summer school to make it up. By the time I got into high school, most of my friends were either in jail, dead, or having their own children. I felt alone. As a teenager, I tried to commit suicide twice, and miraculously, I'm still here. I was sexually abused, molested at the age of 7. I didn't remember this until I was 21 years old because my mind blacked that horrible experience. Traumatic responses often become neurologically hardwired in the limbic system and resurface when a similar emotion is experienced. By the time I was 18, I rebelled and got married, only to find myself in a worse situation than before. We had been secretly dating from the age of 14, and now I found myself in a domestic IPV situation by my first husband, who would repeatedly beat me and then rape me. I went to the pastor of my church at that time asking for help, and the pastor told me to submit, to be cleaner, to cook his meals on time, and that this would change everything. I tried that, it didn't work. I turned to my family and was told I brought this upon myself. The abuse continued, and I knew I had to get away to save my life. But then things got worse after I left because he began to stalk me. He followed me to work and everywhere I went. I became hypervigilant. He would send me flowers, show up at my job and other places. I had to leave a very good job because of this situation. Then one day he tried to kidnap me, and thankfully I got away. I began to hide and move around a lot until I heard that he had moved to Philadelphia. I felt as though tattooed to my forehead was the word abuse me or broken, because every relationship after that was abusive. I will share more of my story during the next webinar on the intersection of domestic violence and substance use. Now let's dive into the webinar. So what is teen dating violence? Dating violence is any form of abuse that takes place in a relationship, including physical, sexual, mental, or emotional abuse. For teenagers, it has become a widespread problem that has serious effects on the developing teen. Breaking the silence defines TDV as a pattern of abusive behaviors, usually a series of abusive behaviors over a course of time, used to exert power and control over a dating partner. Teens and young adults experience the same types of abuse as adults. Physical abuse, any intentional use of force with the intent to cause fear or injury, like hitting, shoving, biting, strangling, kicking, or using a weapon. Sexual abuse, any action that impacts a person's ability to control their sexual activity or circumstances in which sexual activity occurs, including rape, coercion, or restricting access to birth control. Verbal or emotional abuse, non-physical behaviors such as threats, insults, constant monitoring, humiliation, intimidation, isolation, or stalking. Psychological abuse, humiliating the victim, controlling the victim, what the victim can or cannot do, gaslighting, withholding information from the victim, deliberately doing something to make the victim feel diminished or embarrassed, demeaning the victim in public or in private, undermining the victim's confidence and or sense of self-worth, convincing the victim that he or she is crazy or imagining things, and isolation. Spiritual abuse, the inappropriate use of authority, such as the Bible or church tradition, in order to force a person to do that which is unhealthy. The forceful or manipulative denial of the person's feelings and convictions for the self-advancement of the spiritual leader, and that is found in the book Mending the Soul, page 32. In the home, it can look like strict rules to control the child based on partial biblical verses. For example, not wearing pants, must have long hair for girls or short hair for boys. Oppression, made to believe you are possessed when you behave bad. Economic or financial abuse, exerting power and control over a partner through their finances, including taking or withholding money from a partner, or prohibiting a partner from earning or spending their money. For teens, it would be the victim paying for your boyfriend or girlfriend's lunch, movie tickets, clothing, shoes, or school tuition. The objective of economic abuse is to control the victim by making him or her dependent upon the perpetrator. While it will often be achieved by withholding resources, it may also be achieved by providing resources, grooming the victim to understand that the perpetrator is the source of needed resources. So in today's society, we have to include digital abuse, use of technologies and or social media networking to intimidate, harass, or threaten a current or ex-dating partner, such as demanding passwords, checking cell phones, cyberbullying, non-consensual sexting, excessive or threatening texts, or stalking on social media. Stalking, being repeatedly watched, followed, monitored, or harassed. Stalking can occur online or in person and may or may not include giving unwanted gifts. Here you will find a teen power and control wheel, and you can download this and print it and use it at will. Now we're going to watch a video to give an example.
Wow, I'm glad you're here. I just found out that one of my best friends was in an abusive relationship for so long, and none of us knew anything about it. I'm heartbroken. I thought we told each other everything. Maybe if I had spoken up, she would have talked to me about it sooner. So, here goes. Intimate partner violence, sometimes called teen dating violence or domestic violence, is a pattern of behaviors used by one partner to maintain power and control over another partner in an intimate relationship. An intimate partner is a person's boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, partner, or lover. Intimate partner violence may include different kinds of abuse. Physical abuse may include hitting, kicking, punching, or other kinds of physical violence. Emotional abuse may not include physical violence, but it can be equally as harmful. When someone is abused emotionally, they may be called names, humiliated, yelled at, or made to feel intimidated. The abuser may try to control the other person by telling them what to do, what to wear, or where they can and cannot go. Financial abuse is when a person tries to control and limit their partner's access to money so that the partner will be dependent on them. One example would be if the person discouraged or disallowed the partner to work and make their own money. Another is if the person takes the partner's money or credit cards and refuses to give them back. Another form of abuse is known as stalking and harassment. Stalking or harassing someone may include spying on them or following them around and constantly showing up where they are or refusing to leave when asked. Stalking also can include sending harassing or unwanted emails, texts, or posts. Finally, there is partner abuse that involves sexual abuse. This type of violence is when a person forces their partner to participate in sexual acts or behaviors without their consent or ignores the partner's sexual boundaries. Just because a person is in an intimate relationship with someone doesn't mean that they must have sex with them or do sexual things that they find uncomfortable or demeaning. If you or someone you know is being abused in a relationship, it's important to know that it's never the fault of the abused person, and it's important to ask for help. To get help, you can talk to the school counselor, a social worker, or another trusted adult. A great resource if you need information, support, or advice is the National Domestic Violence Hotline. You can check out their website at www.thehotline.org or call 1-800-799-7233. Remember, domestic violence is not love. Someone who really loves you wouldn't try to physically harm you, control you, make you feel bad about yourself, or force you to do something that you don't want to do. A loving and healthy relationship is about consent, respect, and honoring who you are as an individual.
Till next time, don't forget to visit me at amaze.org or go to my YouTube channel to watch more. Bye!
Statistics on teen dating violence. Nearly 20.9% of female high school students and 13.4% of male high school students report being physically or sexually abused by a dating partner. Nearly 1.5 million high school students in the United States are physically abused by dating partners every year. A 2013 study of 10th graders found that 35% had been either physically or verbally abused. 31% were perpetrators of physical or verbal abuse. A 2014 study found 10% of teenage students in dating relationships were coerced into sexual intercourse in the previous year. A 2013 study found 26% of teens in relationships were victims of cyber dating abuse. Females were twice as likely to be victims as males. 57% of teens know someone who has been physically, sexually, or verbally abusive in a dating relationship. Only 33% of teenage dating abuse victims ever told anyone about it. 50% of youth reporting dating violence and rape also reported attempted suicide. This is compared to 12.5% of non-abused girls and 5.4% of non-abused boys. So here's a polling question. What percentage of the national sample of 1,575 Hispanic or Latino teens reported experiencing teen dating violence? A, 12%, B, 17%, C, 22%, or D, 43%. So thank you for participating in this polling question. The answer is 17%. So I'm a Puerto Rican, Hispanic, Latina, and my experience, I never reported. And I know many of friends of mine who also never reported their abuse. It always goes underreported. So reporting in Latino communities. Latinos are less likely to seek formal services for TDV as compared to survivors from other ethnic racial groups. Both US-born and immigrant Latinos report seeking access to shelters less than women from other ethnic groups. However, formal help seeking has been found to reduce depression in Latino survivors. So in Latino communities, teen dating violence is recognized as a major public health concern that impacts adolescents from all ethnic and racial backgrounds in the United States, according to the CDC. However, less is known about the experience of TDV for Latino youth. Like many survivors, Latinos prefer to tell family members, female friends, or neighbors about TDV. Nearly half of Latino Latinos in one study did not report abuse to authorities. Reasons for underreporting may include fear and lack of confidence in the police, shame and guilt, loyalty and/or fear of partners, fear of deportation, and previous experience with childhood victimization. This is especially true for undocumented Latinos who were more likely to seek out informal support for TDV as compared to Latinos with resident and citizen status. However, for both groups, formal help seeking was more likely when experiencing severe physical abuse. Low rates of reporting and self-help seeking among Latinos experiencing TDV may create the illusion that TDV services are not needed by the population. However, understanding the specifics of help-seeking behavior among Latinos can create a more cohesive picture. Low acculturated Latinos, both abused and non-abused, are less likely to seek and use formal social services than their more acculturated counterparts. Non-immigrant Latino survivors contact formal services for IPV resources more often than immigrant Latinos. In the Dating Violence Among Latino Adolescents, Davila study, the researchers found that among the students in the study, dating violence was likely to be a repeated event. Teens who experienced dating violence in the first study were likely to experience dating violence again. As the number of romantic relationships a teen has had increased, so did the risk of being a victim of dating violence. Teens who experienced dating violence in the first study reported feeling less connection with their schools in the follow-up study. Teens who did not experience dating violence in the first study and who had strong social support networks were less likely to re-experience dating violence. Teens who lived with other children in the household had a lower chance of experiencing dating violence. Cultural identity did not affect dating violence victimization. Characteristics of possible abusers. Extreme jealousy, possessiveness, unpredictability, bad-tempered, easily angered, cruelty to animals, verbally abusive, extremely controlling behavior. Character. It is important to also identify perpetrators as they also need help in order to change their behaviors if they choose to do so. More characteristics of possible abusers is accusations of the victim flirting with others or having an affair, control of what the victim wears and how they act, demeaning the victim either privately or publicly, embarrassment or humiliation of the victim in front of others, harassment of the victim at work, antiquated beliefs about roles of women and men in relationships, forced sex or disregard of their partner's unwillingness to have sex, sabotage of birth control methods or refusal to honor agreed upon methods, blaming the victim for anything bad that happens, sabotage or obstruction of the victim's ability to work or attend school, controls all the finances, abuse of other family members, children, or pets. Indicators of possible victims: frequently needing permission or reassurance, submissive or indecisiveness, low self-esteem, changes in behavior or performance at school or work, having little money, poverty, easily frightened and isolated. Here's another polling question. Which is not a common factor contributing to TDV among Latinos? A, religious beliefs of male superiority. B, control through the threats of deportation. C, higher incidence of poverty, and D, machismo. Thank you for participating in this second polling question. I have to admit that this is kind of a trick question, and all of the answers are correct. And the real answer that I do want to focus on is machismo. Because as I am continuing to work with Hispanic families and meet with older generations, I have learned that the real definition of machismo is a man who takes care of his family by providing for them and taking pride in how he treats them. It's also compared to caballerismo, characterized by emotional connectedness, family nurturing, nobleness, ethnic heritage, pride, and respectful conduct. We're gonna talk about substance use. Substance use is often used as a means to cope with or blot out a painful traumatic memory, a way of dealing with feelings of isolation and loneliness, improve feelings of self-worth and self-esteem, and coping with mental health problems, such as anxiety. Anxiety is defined as an intense emotional state that results in excessive and persistent fear and worry. When the survivor experiences anxiety, it could be associated with the profound fear that the abuse will occur again. Some survivors may experience intense fear of going to public and lock themselves in a shelter of their homes. So they start isolating. Others may experience another mental health condition often associated with anxiety known as panic attacks. Panic attacks are intense and overwhelming surges of anxiety and fear that result in psychological reactions, such as rapid heartbeats and difficulty breathing. Depression. Depression can be described as a persistent feeling of deep sadness. Common symptoms include prolonged periods of sadness, feelings of hopelessness, unexplainable and uncontrollable bouts of crying, significant weight loss or weight gain, lethargy, emotional apathy, or lack of interest and pleasure in previously enjoyed activities. Depression can have negative impact on a person's day-to-day functioning and can result in poor schoolwork and work performance, as well as friendships and relationship problems. PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorder, is a mental health condition triggered by a traumatic event. Symptoms can emerge months or even years after the sexual trauma or any kind of trauma. Some common symptoms of PTSD include flashbacks, nightmares, intense distress when exposed to sights, sounds, or smells that trigger memories of the trauma, and bodily reactions when reminded of the trauma. So trauma survivors are more likely to abuse substances due to the overwhelming reactions and emotions that trauma produces, such as shame, guilt, and isolation, helplessness and hopelessness, increased agitation and irritability, increased anxiety and depression, triggering situations. And triggering situations can be anything from a smell, slamming a door, lights, passing by a neighborhood. All these things can be triggering and increase anxiety as well as depression in a person who has experienced trauma. And so many people choose substances in order to cope with them. In other words, not to feel and to become numb and avoid dealing with what has happened. Next week, we will provide more information regarding substance use. Some warning signs that lead to substance abuse is suicidal ideation. So a person who has had trauma feels so bad about themselves that they just want to give up on life and take their own life. I have, like I shared before, I have attempted suicide many times, and thankfully I'm still here. Flashbacks is a form of trigger where you remember the experience, and it can happen by watching TV. Watching a movie can trigger a flashback. Nightmares is when you're having heightened, vivid dreams about what has happened. Increased arousal is when somebody cannot come into a room and they scare you. I don't know if you've seen a cat, when you scare the cat, that it just stands on its forepaws and all the hairs stick up. That's heightened, increased arousal. Hypervigilance happens a lot when you've been stalked. And so you're constantly looking behind to see who is watching you. If you're driving, who's following you? With me, it was when I was on the train, who was around? Recurrent failure to fulfill responsibilities at work and school because you're constantly thinking about when is the trauma going to do to avoid it? So your school grades go down, your work performance fails, and then there are consequences where you would have to repeat a class, or you probably could get fired from work. Using substances in hazardous situations such as driving. So a person who has had trauma may turn to alcohol or drugs and then drive a car. So what does prevention look like? Signs of healthy relationships. What do healthy relationships look like? In a healthy relationship, you enjoy spending time together and you bring out the best in each other. A healthy relationship should make you happy. No relationship is 100% of the time perfect, but the good times should definitely outweigh the difficult times. Healthy relationships involve feeling safe with each other, trusting and supporting one another, the ability to solve conflicts, apologizing when you offend somebody, being supportive and proud of another's accomplishment, family and friends like this person. So healthy relationships involve honesty, respect, trust, open communication between partners, and they take effort and compromise from both people. There is no imbalance of power. Partners respect each other's independence, can make their own decisions without fear of retribution or retaliation, and share decisions. So modeling positive behaviors, speaking to teens about abuse, providing education around TDV in schools, educating parents, religious leaders, youth groups, schools, counselors, law enforcement, and social services. Healthy relationships. In a healthy relationship, people respect one another. There is equality. It's 50-50. It's not 125 or 75. I mean 75-25, or it's 50-50. There is good communication. and each other allows space when needed. It is not overwhelming or suffocating. And there's a commitment to one another. Unhealthy relationships include disrespectful behavior, not listening or valuing the other person's opinion, insulting and or cursing at each other, making the other person feel bad about themselves, criticizing friends and family members, threatening to hurt the other person, grabbing, hitting, pushing, or physically hurting the other person, controlling or possessiveness, withholding affection, punishes the other person, uses drugs or alcohol as an excuse to hurt the other person, blames the other person for their behavior, spreads hurtful rumors. Let's watch a video on healthy relationships.
Hey, my name's Kaya, and I'm a black fella from Victoria. I just want to tell you about me and this guy I've been hanging with. His name's Scott, and I love him. Well, I think I love him. It's just that, it's kind of got a bit weird lately. So, I first met him when I was playing netball, right? We were at the Netball and Football Carnival, which was in town last October. He's not Corey, but he's like best mates with my cousin Alice's boyfriend. Scott is so hot. They reckon he's had a six-pack since forever. And he has these amazing blue eyes, like I can't even. Jasmine said he couldn't stop looking at me. And since I've sorted my eyebrows out, the girls reckon I'm looking pretty fierce. I didn't talk to him or anything, but Scott found me on Instagram and DM'd me. We started Snapchatting each other every day and we got our streak up to like 66. Then, when we meet up, he'd be real charming, like call me bae, and was always holding my hand and saying how pretty I am. One day though, Scott saw me hanging with my brother Danny and a couple of our cousins. We've got the biggest mob, hey, so there's always family around. These fellas were travelling through town, so Danny and I went back to the park to just hang with them. Next time I saw Scott though, he was being quiet and sooky, asking why I was hanging out with the other guys. I tried to tell him about family, but he didn't want to hear it. He said that I should change my Instagram to private. He reckons too many guys are liking my pics and says that I should delete them. Same with any guys on my Snapchat. Which I don't think is fair, but Scott's all like if I loved him, I'd do it. And I really do love him. He's always buying me chocolate and saying that he loves me. So I did. He was cool for a bit, but then he started throwing shade at my friends. Reckoned they were annoying and stupid and that I shouldn't hang out with them. He also started saying that he hated my clothes and that I looked like a hoe when I wore my new gold hoops. Then, just a couple of weeks ago, Scott and I had a full-on fight outside my auntie's house. It started because Scott reckoned my mum and dad were hopeless because they were always getting me to look after my little brothers. I told him I liked doing it, but he just kept on at me, saying I wasn't spending enough time with him. Jasmine was across the road and she saw us fighting. I was so ashamed that I didn't even reply when she sent me a text asking if I was okay. Jazz is my BFF, but I just don't want to talk about it. I feel like I'd cry if she asked me how I was. I'm so upset and confused. I just don't know what to think or do right now. Hello?
Oh, hey, you picked up. Hey, have you done that maths revision yet? I'm struggling, hey.
Yeah, same.
So I just want to ask, like, are you alright, sis? It's just that I heard you and Scott yelling the other day, and you didn't reply to my message, so I just want to know that you're alright.
Yeah.
Like, I know you really like Scott. He's hot and he's funny and nice, but me and Danny have heard how he's been talking to you lately, and I just don't want you to feel bad, because you know that you slay, right? Like, you should be feeling good all the time.
Thanks, Jess.
Kaya, I love you. You're my bestie, so please just talk to me if you need to.
It's good to chat. Find someone you trust, like your family, friends, or teachers, to have a yarn. For more information on where you can get help, check out these websites. A healthy relationship means you won't have to sacrifice your family, friends, culture, or dignity.
How does dating violence affect Latino youth? The effects of dating violence on youth are profound. Youth who are experiencing dating violence typically display some or all of the following behaviors and characteristics. Psychosomatic issues. So if a child at a school is constantly going to the nurse and saying that they have stomach aches or headaches, that can be a psychosomatic issue and something to be looked into. Subtle reactions, so loss of appetite, overeating, sleep difficulties, nail biting or stuttering are also things that we need to look out for to identify if a person has been abused or not. Low self-esteem and feelings of failure. I can give you a personal example on this, and it's that as I was growing up as a kid, I was constantly told I would never amount to anything, I would never become anything, I was not smart enough, I was not pretty enough, and that sunk in. It became a recording in my mind that I believed. Anger, aggression, hostility, or destructiveness are also signs that a person is being abused. So if you know a person that from being nice and gentle, like I experienced, becomes destructive or angry and starts fighting, it's something to look into. Destructive behaviors or violence towards peers is another warning sign. Changing the way that they dress. So they used to come to school and dress conservative, and now they're dressing provocative. That's another sign. And then juvenile delinquency, truancy, vandalism, drinking, or drug abuse. Survivors of trauma have to attempt to regulate these very overwhelming emotions. Many times, our normal coping mechanisms that we use for typical life stressors aren't enough to soothe ourselves. And so this is why we should teach our families, our kids, and provide information on how to model healthy relationships. So one thing I did, and my husband and I have done, I'm a mother of 3 adult children, and during my healing process, we made it an issue to model healthy, positive behaviors. My kids grew up in very abusive situations where all they heard was yelling and screaming. And so we decided that we wanted to change that. And so we hugged in front of our kids. We kissed in front of our kids. We sat down and had conversations in front of our kids so that they would see and know what a healthy relationship looked like. We sat with them and we talked about abuse. I didn't give them details and they don't know my entire story, but we were able to discuss, what abuse is and how it looks like and how to prevent it. So we gave them education. One important thing, and I live in Colorado and it's difficult for us to provide education inside the schools about teen dating in schools. So just continuously going to the schools or talking to the counselors or even talking to families that you meet about teen dating violence and what it looks like. educating pastors, parents, religious leaders, youth groups, school counselors, law enforcement, and social services is very important. Now let's move on to healthy communication skills. So communication allows you and your partner to have a deep understanding of each other and allows you to connect. In a healthy relationship with good communication, both partners treat each other with respect. That is, I don't yell at my husband does not yell at me. We talk in normal tones, and we have actually sat down and defined what the word respect means. Because in Hispanic cultures, I'm Hispanic and he's white, so Caucasian, it may mean differently. So in order to have a healthy communication, we first had to learn the definition of words. And so what respect meant to me was not the same as what respect meant to him. So we had to come together and find a word that was that worked for both of us. Speaking openly to one another about thoughts and feelings, not having secrets is very important in a healthy communication. Feeling comfortable to talk about things is another aspect of healthy communications. Although I'm married, my husband cannot read my mind. Same thing in teen dating. We don't have ESP unless you share your thoughts and your feelings. I don't know what you're feeling. I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know what you're planning. And then when you do speak to somebody, it's the ability of feeling heard when expressing your feelings. Not that somebody shuts you down when you say, oh my God, this made me feel horrible. It's using those I statements is what I teach my clients when they are angry with their spouse or with their partner. It's, I felt this when this happened. Listening to each other and willing to compromise, right? So you have two people who either come from different ethnic, racial backgrounds or just different perspectives. And so what does compromise look like? In our household, I'm a therapist and I love not coming home and watching things about learning. My husband, on the other hand, loves watching astronomy and all these documentations. So our compromise is we watch one of each. So that way I get satisfied and he gets satisfied. Not criticizing each other, right? So we're in a healthy communication or a healthy relationship. We're supposed to lift each other up. So I don't tell my husband, oh, you're no good at this. No. If he doesn't understand and he doesn't know, I find a nicer way of saying, let me help you, let me teach you how to do this. Feeling supported to do things they like. I have the privilege of actually going back to school at the age of 36. And my husband supported me through all this. This is my third career now. And he actually praised me and was like, I'm gonna help you succeed in this. So feeling supported in whatever it is the other person wants to do, and vice versa. It's not just one-sided. And then celebrating each other's victories and accomplishments and their successes. So when I graduated, I got a car. So he celebrated really nicely. I'm not saying that's gonna happen to everyone, but I mean, taking the other person out to dinner, giving the other person a card, buying them flowers, doing simple things to say, I appreciate you, I'm proud of you, I believe in you, are ways to demonstrate healthy relationships. Let's watch another video of healthy versus unhealthy relationships.
Oh, you won't believe the day I've had. It was so terrible. Casey, who's supposed to be my best friend, promised me that we'd go to the mall after school. Later, she texted me that she couldn't go, so I went with Nicole, my almost best friend, instead. But then, at the mall, just next to the food court, you won't believe who I saw. That's right, Casey! And she was with Nathan, her new boyfriend. Ugh, I hate her. I'm so lucky I have you. You're such a good listener. Now that you're in your teens, you may feel like you want to spend less time with your family and more time with your friends. During this time, some of your friendships may deepen while others might fade away. And some of your friendships may even become romantic. Being in a healthy relationship, whether a friendship or a romantic relationship, can be fun, but it can also be complicated. So here are some rules to follow to make sure your friendships are healthy. In a healthy relationship, each person supports and encourages the other. Real friends want to know what you're thinking and feeling, and they'll be interested in what you have to say. It's okay to have disagreements, even in a healthy relationship, but it's important to do so respectfully and talk openly about it with each other. Sometimes in a relationship, you'll need to compromise. But in a healthy relationship, the same person should not be the one who always compromises. It's important for both people to give and take. Finally, it's important to treat your relationships with care. And if a friend or romantic partner makes you feel small, teases you, or physically or sexually pushes you into doing things that you don't really want to do, then this might not be a healthy relationship for you. Remember, a healthy relationship, whether just a friendship or a romantic relationship, should make you feel good about yourself and who you are. After all, you are pretty great. Okay, so enough about me. How was your day? Till next time, don't forget to visit me at amaze.org or go to my YouTube channel to watch more. Bye!
Now we're going to talk about setting boundaries. So each person should express to their partner what they are and are not comfortable with when it comes to sex life, finances, family and friends, personal space, and time. In a healthy relationship with boundaries, both partners allow each other to spend time with friends and family. That is, you're not suffocated by only spending time with your partner, with your boyfriend, with your husband. You're able to, go out with your girlfriends, go out to dinner, spend time with your family. It is very important to notice if your partner likes your family or not, because your family is your family and your partner should not be able to take you away from them unless it's unhealthy or you need to set boundaries from your family. And so giving each other the time to say, I'm gonna plan this date night with my girlfriends, and your partner's okay with it. And he trusts you enough, or she trusts you enough to say, hey, go have the time of your life. Not abuse technology or check on the partner. In this day and age of digital technology, Find My iPhones or Life 360 is a way of tracking where family members are or even partners are. And so having the ability to communicate rather than be stalked, and not having your partner constantly text you and be like, where are you? Having the ability and the freedom to be able to go to work and come back without having your partner constantly telling you, where are you? Why aren't you home? Or threatening that if you don't get home at a certain time, something's gonna happen. So setting the boundaries of a trusting relationship where if I do have Find My iPhones or Life 360, I'm not constantly abusing that app to check on you. I'm not constantly grabbing your phone to read your text messages or checking your photos to see who you have been taking pictures with. I'm not reading your email. I am not grabbing your laptop computer. I'm not forcing you to give me passcodes to anything. Setting boundaries means you trust the person with their technology and you're not controlling them. So you trust each other and are not required to check in. So the other partner it's not like, okay, I'm going to work and I have to tell my husband, oh, I made it. I do it because I want him to feel okay that I made it to work on time or that I made it to work safely. It is not a requirement of him checking where I am at every day or every hour of the day. Do not pressure the other to do things that they don't want to do, right? So if my partner likes to get on roller coasters and I don't like to get on roller coasters, I'm not pressured to get on a roller coaster because I'm scared of it or whatever the cause may be. I'm not pressured to dress a certain way because my partner wants me to dress that way. I'm not pressured to behave a certain way. Or in our relationship, I'm an extreme extrovert and he's an extreme introvert. So I don't pressure him to attend all the activities I attend because I know they're uncomfortable for him. And he doesn't pressure me to stay at home because he knows that's boring to me. So we have this understanding of, I have activities, I am an extrovert, I like to be around other people, and yet he likes to be home reading a book or watching his National Geographic special. Not constantly accusing the other person of cheating or being unfaithful. So in a violence, in a teen dating violence, IPV or domestic violence situation, my experience is that my partner was cheating on me and therefore accused me of cheating and made me feel completely uncomfortable. And when this happens over and over and over again, you start to believe things. And so although I was not cheating or being unfaithful, I was made to seem like I was. And so not accusing the other person, trusting the other person enough that you're not, like I said, reading their emails, not checking their phone to see who's texting them and what they're saying, or checking their phone to see what pictures are in there, or checking their Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever feed that they're on to see what it is they're doing or who they're talking to. It's being able to trust the person wholeheartedly. So in healthy boundaries, it's okay to say no. And this is something I recently just learned. No is a complete sentence. And this is something I try to, in therapy, I teach my clients. And they look at me like, how is no a complete sentence? It is. You say no, period. That's it. You don't have to give an explanation. You don't have to feel guilty. You don't have to feel ashamed about telling a person no. What happens is, if we do something and we really don't want to, then we're going to do it reluctantly. And then that's not healthy. But if we say no and not do it, then we're okay. And it is okay to say no. And it's something that's like a new habit that we have to create within ourselves, because it's something that has to be practiced. Because as a healthcare provider, as a mental health clinician, we want to help others to the point that we exhaust ourselves. And so learning how to have boundaries and say no. I usually tell my husband that he's a great barometer for me, even though he's been slacking lately. I tell him that I need you to check me, check my calendar and check me, so that I don't overbook myself, I don't double book myself, I don't overwhelm myself in a way that then I feel bad because I'm not giving 100% of what I can. And I do my worst. So having the ability to say no. And remember that a habit takes 21 to 30 days to create. And so we have to repeat it constantly and feel good about it. And it's okay. Making your well-being important, right? So as a clinician, I talk a lot about self-care and what does self-care look like. For some people, self-care can look like taking a bath, filling up the tub, putting candles, listening to music. That can be self-care. At times, self-care can be binge watching something because let's say you just finished a course in college and you feel good about it, and now you just want to let your brain relax. That's okay. Self-care can be getting a manicure or pedicure. If you can't afford that, then doing it at home, but taking the time to do it for yourself. Self-care can be getting your hair done, getting a massage. Going to a therapist can be self-care because you're finding help to solutions, to problems, and creating solutions. Another healthy boundary is trusting your gut. I know that a person that has experienced trauma, it is hard for them to trust even their emotions. And it took me a long time to identify what was good versus what was bad because of all the experience I had with the negative, with the bad. And so our bodies are really good at identifying good and bad. And so sometimes you'll be talking to somebody and it may be, you may have a good feeling after talking to that person. And sometimes you may not have a good feeling after talking to a different person. That's trusting your gut and knowing when to walk away versus starting a relationship with somebody. Know your body. And if your body is aligned, you will be able to have feelings, whether it's butterflies in your stomach or tightening in your stomach, that will identify good versus bad. And then, of course, respecting yourself. And that's something I had to learn for myself was, how do I respect myself enough not to get into another abusive situation, right? How do I care for myself enough not to put my children into another abusive situation? And so I had to go through a lot of therapy myself, which is why I became a therapist, and learn how not to sabotage good relationships. And so in respecting myself, it's looking at myself in the mirror every morning and saying, I am a good person. It's saying, I want to help others. It's just changing your mindset from something negative to something positive. People that have been abused have, like I said before, have this recording in their mind of all the negative behaviors. But in time, those negative thoughts, those negative recordings can be diminished. And so we don't hear them as often, and that helps us move forward in our healing process. And so how do we break the cycle of abuse? So educating Latino families. Family and parents' role in reducing risk for youth. The more care Latino youth receive from their parents, the less likely they are to experience sexual or physical assault in their lifetime. Latino youth are less likely to be psychologically victimized if they come from a home with strong family cohesion. And what does that look like? Strong family cohesion is where kids can go to their family, to their parents and say, hey, this is going on in school, or I'm having this situation with this kid in my school, or I'm being bullied, or I met this person. Can I bring them over so that you can meet this person and tell me what you think of them? It's having that relationship where they can talk to you about anything. So like I said previously, I have 3 adult kids, and their preference is usually talking to me when I'm driving. And so that's when they'll talk to me about sexual questions, which of course, you gotta like focus on driving and not really focus on them. But I think they do it intentionally. But I love the fact that they're able to come to me and talk to me about anything. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's drugs, whether it's sex, whether it's school, whether it's work, they feel comfortable enough to come and talk to me. For Latino youth, the stronger communication practices they have with their parents, the less likely they are to experience all forms of victimization and perpetration of violence. So what does the Latino community look like? With us growing up, and I do emphasize that not everything in my childhood was bad, because my dad was a great cook. And so for holidays, he went off cooking and decorating for Christmas. And so we would have parrandas, and where everybody would come over and my dad would cook up a storm and feed an army, so to speak. And so we would stay up really late and just having fun. Strong communication practices is, you know, having family gatherings, whether it's every Sunday or on holidays. Being able to have contact with siblings after you grow up, or cousins. Practicing your culture is very important in Latino families. Latino youth are less likely to experience teen dating violence when they come from homes with higher levels of parental monitoring and family connectedness. I understand that in a lot of Latino families today, both parents have to work and are often gone, and so the kids are left unsupervised. I get it. I was a single mom of 3 kids and I had to work, and my kids were in daycare constantly. And it's hard for the children not seeing and having either one or both parents there. But having those hard conversations with your kids about drugs, about alcohol, about violence. So educating them on what's good and what's bad. Even if we're working like 24 hours a day, taking that time before they go to bed and just checking in and saying, you know, is anything going on in school that I need to know about? Stronger ties to traditional Latino cultural values and orientation relates to lower risk of perpetuating violence in emerging adulthood. So how do we break the cycle? Again, it's bringing awareness to schools, to churches, to youth groups, to law enforcement, to social services, to anybody in the community. Let's talk about abuse so that we can prevent abuse. Create safe environments that model healthy relationships. And I know it's difficult to bring awareness to schools, to churches, and other organizations, but we must be persistent and continue asking until communities allow us to provide education and bring awareness. In doing this, we will lower the percentages of teen dating violence. Thank you for listening. Here are some resources on teen domestic violence helpline. So please use these.
Glory, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. Thank you. Now it's time to the QA questions. Let's go. We have a few. Let's start with Charlene Sosa. Charlene is asking, can you explain, please, what gaslighting is?
Yes, that's a new term that teenagers use. And from what I have seen and was explained to me, gaslighting is when somebody uses manipulation and makes you feel like you're the cause of the problem. And so they do it to an extreme that you actually become argumentative and possibly even violent. So it makes you angry to the point that you explode.
Thank you, Glory. The second question that we have is, for example, say, what talking about underreporting, what are the rights for a person who doesn't have a legal status and how they can report the domestic violence situations?
So I had experience working with the Colorado Organization of Victim Assistance, and I was their case manager. And in learning with undocumented people, everyone has rights. And it's learning what your rights are when you're a victim of abuse. If you go to the police and tell them you're being abused, or if you call a hotline and tell them you're being abused, it does not automatically mean that you're going to get deported. It's learning and being educated on the rights you have as a victim. And they're actually called victim rights. And so you can actually look them up online. And I know that the Colorado Organization of Victim Assistance actually has a link to that in their website.
Also, we have a question for Diana Rodriguez. He said, can you please go more in deep about non-consensual sexting?
So sexting is when you're taking pictures of private parts and you send them to your boyfriend. So non-consensual would mean if I have sent that to my partner and he forwards it to other people. And so without my permission, he has provided my intimate sexting picture to other people as a form of abuse, to harm, to intimidate, and to make me feel bad.
Thank you. We have a question for Veronica Ramos, and she is asking about, Guadalupe Luna. He said, can you please, what Hispanic Latino groups do you work with that gave you the definition of machismo?
So I actually provide counseling to Hispanics here in Colorado. And I meet with several male figures and also adult families. So older adults, I have a client right now who's 95 years old and asking about culture and upbringing and how was it during their time. I was explained that machismo actually means taking care of families and providing for families, not the definition that we have in today's society of being a macho man and abusing women and things like that. So it was speaking with a person from Honduras, Mexican, Cuban, and even other Puerto Ricans.
The next question is for Roxana. I say, thank you so much for this presentation. You gave a great insight. I think it's more a comment than a question. You gave great insight into the teen and Hispanic culture. The next question is, can you please repeat how could you solve a conflict without using violence?
So let's say I am talking to my husband and there's an issue with one of our teens and I disagree and we both disagree. So the conflict would be having an argument where it gets really loud, it becomes disrespectful. And we actually end up cursing at each other. And, you know, and early in our marriage, it has happened. Solving this without disrespecting each other is learning how to say, we need to take a time out. We need to think about this. We need to come back when we're both less emotional, less angry, and then come to a conclusion that works for both of us. And understanding that it's okay not to agree. I'm not going to agree with my partner 100% of the time. And that's okay. But how do we come to an agreement, a mutual agreement, where both parties are satisfied?
Well, thank you so much, Glory, once again. First of all, we want to thank you for sharing your personal experience with us, your stories. That definitely enriched this presentation. Thank you for reminding us the importance is to have a trusted adult and that we have rights even when we don't have a legal status in this country, and the importance to report the domestic violence. Thank you for your dedication to the prevention field. We believe that with these presentations, we can really enhance and promote healthy and safer relationships. Thank you again for this wonderful presentation.
You're welcome.
Now, we have some resources over here, also some reference that you can see where we get all this information if you want to go back to the sources and learn more, a little bit more about the material that we present this afternoon. Next slide, please. This is our presenter contact information, so feel free to reach her at any time. Next slide, please. And this is our contact information. So you want to contact the Prevention Technology Transfer Center, please feel free to reach us at any time. You have email address and phone numbers in there. Next slide, please. And this is just a reminder that we are going to offer another intersection of domestic violence and intimate partner webinar, and the date is February 25th, 25 at 11:30 from 1 p.m. So you are more than welcome to participate. We invite you to get registered next week for the next week webinar. And here is our evaluation. Please, now you're going to be redirected to complete the evaluation. We appreciate your participation. When you open the link under the event date and name, please select February 18, Preventing Teen Dating Violence Among Latino Youth. Your opinion is so important to us, so please take a moment to complete the evaluation. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.